Good afternoon everyone and welcome to the City Lifestyle Committee meeting of the 19th of August 2020. I'd like to declare this meeting open at 12 p.m. and advise that the meeting attendees that this meeting is being audio recorded. I'd like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners and the land on which we meet and paying my respect to elders past, present and emerging. Councillors, do we have any leaves of absence to consider? Right. With no leaves of absence, we'll get right underway. We're going to mix up the agenda a little bit today, so I apologise if you're chasing the agenda. Just excuse me one moment, please. We're just waiting on council officers to arrive. I'm just moving things around as we're waiting for some officers to come down and join us. So with that in mind, call me anything but not late for dinner. Councillors, I draw your attention to page 152 of your reports. We're going to kick off today's meeting with item 8.1, which is our Hooning Task Force. And I'll invite Nick Maguire, our Community Safety Manager, to come and take a seat. And just in the interim, do councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare? There being no conflicts of interest, I'll now ask the Community Services Manager to present his report.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just catching my breath, sorry. Good afternoon, councillors. This report relates to the establishment of the Hooning Task Force, and as you'll be aware, Council allocated some funding in the 2020-21 budget to develop and implement a Hooning action plan. So, as per the budget resolution, the first step in this process is to seek endorsement for the terms of reference for the task force that will ultimately help guide the development of the action plan, which will then ultimately be presented back to Council for endorsement for consideration. In the development of the terms of reference, we've currently facilitated two different meetings with the councillors that were nominated during the budget process to be part of the task force. This includes Councillors Heremiah, Councillor Fraser, Councillor Hall, Councillor Murphy, and we've also included Councillor Koransky in those discussions as well as the chair of the City Lifestyle Committee. Those councillors have been working with us and providing advice to us around the development of those terms of reference. So based on this, the terms of reference is provided today for your consideration, which is included in the recommendations. And the second recommendation is also to include Councillor Koransky on the task force to work with the other councillors that have already been endorsed. So I just put those recommendations to you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Nick. And now I'll open it to the floor. Have we got any questions? I might ask Councillor Heremiah, who's looking at heading up the task force, for his thoughts.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank Nick and his team for the great work on this. It's awesome to see an idea, really, that we had in Committee of the Whole come into paper with money behind it. The purpose of the Hooning Task Force is, on top of a number of other things, is to figure out how we should spend the $250,000 that we allocated during Committee of the Whole. Now the terms of reference we worked on, and it was developed, and Nick's team did a great job, and we're almost there. Now there's only one more change that I believe we need to make, and it's regarding the voting membership of the Hooning Task Force. Now, Hooning Task Force, it will consult with a bunch of people, it will talk to council staff, it will talk to Queensland Police, it will talk to everyone and listen to everyone. But when it comes to voting, I believe it should stay with councillors. But I see in here, it doesn't only have councillors, but it also has council staff and the organisation, I mean. Now, just wanted to ask Nick, are you aware of any past committees in Logan City Council that have had the organisation as voting members?
Through you, Madam Chair. So our Community Safety Advisory Group has council officers as members of that advisory group, and I would consider that in a similar kind of context. But if councillors are all in agreement, it's not necessary for the council officers to be listed as members. The council officers could quite easily be listed as observers. There's no drama with that. I don't necessarily envisage that there will be a whole lot of, and again, this is to be led by the councillors and other members of the task force, but I don't envisage that there will be a lot of voting that goes on within this task force. Ultimately, as it mentions in the terms of reference, the decision as to how we spend that $250,000 sits with council. So, but it would be no drama for the officers, council officers, to be removed as members and to be listed as observers.
And I think it's really important that they attend and have their voice, but I'm just concerned about the voting element of council officers. But on top of that, I looked at the Gold Coast and Brisbane and a few other councils, and I couldn't find any committees that had the organisation as voting members. Are you aware of any other councils that have the organisation as voting members on any of their committees?
So through you, Madam Chair, so you're referring to, as in other external agencies like Queensland Police, on this particular task force? Is that what you mean by other agencies that have voting rights?
No, I said the organisation, so council officers, yeah.
No, I'm not aware whether there are, but as I say, if council's preference is that officers be removed and just become observers, then we can make that happen. But I'm not aware of any other task force or advisory groups where council officers are positioned in that way. Oh yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting point. I just don't want to set a precedent that is not good, because I looked at Brisbane City Council and none of those committees had the organisation as voting members. I looked at Gold Coast. I even looked at Rockhampton up north, and none of those had the organisation as voting members. And I thought maybe, okay, this is just a weird thing. So I looked at the Queensland Parliament, and none of those committees had organisation as voting members. So then I said, okay, let's go to San Francisco and look at their city council. Surely something must be different all the way over there. But even in San Francisco, thousands of miles away, none of the organisation are voting members. If you look at the US Congress, if you look at the French Parliament, none of these places have the organisation as voting members on any of their committees. And I think maybe it's because it's not a good idea. So I really like the terms of reference. I think it's awesome. It's really well written. I'm just concerned about the organisation being a voting member. So I've put up a motion to amend it, and that's my little spiel. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Harrimeyer. I see hands flying about left, right and centre, so if we might just park your amended motion for a moment and we'll come back to that. Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. That was the Mayor, not Councillor Bradley. Yes, Mr Mayor.
Oh, sorry. I'm just a little bit confused. In regards to what Councillor Harrimeyer was talking about, the actual voting, the committee appointment is as we've done in the past, but the councillors were the only ones that voted. So this is what's going to continue? Or is this a different model than what we've had in the past?
No, through you, Madam Chair. So this is a task force which is largely an advisory group. So there will be other, at the moment what we're recommending is that there will be other external agencies that are also members of this advisory group. Yes,
but will they be able to vote?
Well, I think, I mean, we've got them listed as members. So if it came down to having to vote on something, then yes, they would be able to. But as I said, I don't envisage that this is going to be a group that actually votes on different matters. It'll be something that put forward recommendations and provides advice around what the Hooning Action Plan needs to look like, and then ultimately it will be council that will decide whether that is what occurs or not.
Okay, because the normal advisory roles that I've been involved in, and we'll take the mosquito one, we have all the experts around the table, but it's the councillors that actually vote and make the decisions. Is that not? So you'll have, because there appears to be quite a number of people involved, they're not all getting voting rights, are they? Because it could be 5 councillors there and get outvoted every time.
Through you, Madam Chair. So under this terms of reference, there is 3 different representatives from Queensland Police and also a representative from the Department of Transport and Main Roads as the other external agency. So if there were matters that needed to be voted on, then they would have, a vote. But still, as I say, the ultimate decision comes back to council to determine. Part of the reason why we were really keen to make those external agencies members of this task force is because, as we've spoken about a number of times, ultimately Queensland Police are the ones that we're trying to influence in the way that they help us respond to issues around hooning. So we feel like if we're going to get them to actually buy into this process, then they need to be members of the task force.
Because I'm quite confident the committee wouldn't vote for something that was ultra vires. In other words, that one of the police officers, senior police or traffic engineer, advised the committee not to do something because it would be illegal, or they would have the good sense not to vote for it. I just hope that is not there because of that reason.
No, I mean, through you, Madam Chair, ultimately we, as I say, the main reason why we've got those agencies involved is because, you know, largely this issue is a matter for them to, we're trying to elevate this issue as a matter within those different agencies, and we're keen for them to have that sort of buy into the process. But if it came to a numbers thing, I mean, looking at the numbers as it is now, if we remove the council officers and make them as observers, as Councillor Heremiah suggested, then it would be 5 councillors against 4 external agencies.
Yeah, well, not all councillors agree with each other at any time, I can tell you. I'll let the other councillors decide.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Any further questions? No. Councillor Russell.
Sorry, that came up quicker than I realised. I actually just wanted to ask that if down the track other councillors might want to join the task force, if there's space for that to happen.
Through you, Madam Chair, so the existing councillors that have been endorsed were endorsed as part of that budget process, and we've recommended Councillor Karansky, but there is a clause in there, and I'll have to find the specific wording, but there is a clause in there where other members can be added or other members can be removed, but that would be for the task force to determine at this point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to allay the fears of councillors, even if the 5 councillors on the committee were outnumbered by 20 externals who voted against them constantly, the committee reports, like, it's called a task force, it's actually an advisory committee, and it reports up to this committee. And then councillors who were voted against in committee would make their views known very clearly to their colleagues, and we would vote appropriately. So while, yes, the councillors may be outnumbered, it's not something that you need to be concerned with from a democratic point of view, because the recommendations will still come to this committee to be endorsed and ultimately referred up to council.
Do I have any other questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Lane.
So, Nick, just a quick question. So this is an advisory committee only?
Yes, correct.
So it doesn't have the capacity to allocate funds or to do anything other than make recommendations?
Yes, that's correct.
And if councillors were, and I'm not a part of the task force, but if councillors were on that task force and there was a recommendation that wasn't agreed with by the councillors, that would be embarrassing for them, wouldn't it?
Say that again, sorry, Councillor.
So if there was a recommendation that came up that councillors didn't agree with, but it passed because the numbers on the task force were greater than the councillors there, that would be embarrassing for the councillors.
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, well, I can't really speak to
I suppose that's a difficult question for the council officers to
Well, whether or
answer,
not they're
but
embarrassed or
certainly
not.
Councillor
No,
Lane,
I
can
completely
hear where you're
understand
coming
that. My point is that in terms of making decisions other than recommendations, that task force has no power, and that any recommendations that come out of it come to this committee. That's right?
That's correct, yes.
And you're happy for council officers to be removed, but for police to remain, or associated?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think it's like what I'm hoping is that this task force is a really collaborative approach to how we're dealing with hooning. So I'm hoping that there won't be those sorts of challenges around whether councillors are disagreeing with police officers and, you know, and back and forward. So, but yeah, it's I'm happy for the council officers to be removed as members and happy for us to be listed as observers, but I still think that it's best if the other external agencies and councillors are equal members of this approach, so that we can demonstrate that the solution that we're trying to achieve is a cross-government approach to how we're dealing with hooning.
And I don't know the process, so forgive me, Madam Chair, but is it better that we shelve this for the moment so that the task force members can go away and discuss this and then come back and make a recommendation, I suppose?
We actually have recommendations and amended motions that are on the floor. Councillor Lane, I take on board what you're saying, but I would be in the hands of my colleagues.
Yep.
I do have some further questions, so let's exhaust our questions first. So we'll go to, where are we next? Councillor Russell.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd just like to please clarify with what the Deputy Mayor was saying before. I'd like to just be clear, does everybody, so every councillor and the mayor obviously still has an equal stake and an equal voice in I guess,
Voting
yes.
for the actual recommendation.
Yes.
Am I right to respond, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So the advantage of being on the task force is that you will be involved in crafting the recommendations. All councillors have an equal vote when it comes to determining those recommendations, but by being in the task force, you'll get an opportunity to influence and craft those and have your voice heard, so you'll contribute to the recommendations that come up to committee. Ultimately, if for whatever reason the task force makes recommendations that the majority of councillors can't support, then those recommendations will fail, and they'll either be sent back to the task force to give us better advice, different advice, or we'll have to come up with our own recommendations. So there is an advantage to being on the task force because your position and your views will be heard and your influence will be felt, but ultimately it still has to come back to full council for endorsement, as all decisions in this place do.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear that everybody in Logan City's perspective will be heard. Yeah. Thank you.
And that was well articulated. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. I wish to thank Nick for the recent tour I had of the camera room, and there was some hooning that I saw on the screen which was in Division 1, so it does unfortunately go across the city. Excuse me. Historically, the members that are listed here have actually voted. So I recall being on the, I can't remember what it's called, Safe City
Community
Advisory Group or something or other, where the police, TMR, council officers, etc., basically received reports, but they didn't actually endorse recommendations, they just received reports. But I am happy to support the amendment as well.
Awesome. Is any other councillors want to make any point known? Okay, so moving forward, I'd just like to not take away from what this actually is really all about. This is something that the community have communicated to many councillors, and I know the task force councillors who are in front of me, Councillor Hall, Councillor Fraser, of course Councillor Heremiah, and also Councillor Murphy were very passionate about driving this issue forward, and I see this as a tremendous opportunity for you to do something for your communities and for the broader city of Logan as a whole. And I acknowledge the manager's comments about the key to this is collaboration and working with good industry partners. So thank you to all of you who have been thus far involved in getting this report up to council. Now, we actually have two recommendations ahead of us at the moment. So in the first instance, what I'm going to do is I'll put Councillor Heremiah's recommendation up, and if that doesn't go forward, then we will revert back to the original recommendation. So the recommendation's on the board ahead of you, and it reads that the Hooning Task Force terms of reference as detailed in the report of Community Service Manager dated the 19th of August 2020 be endorsed, subject to an amendment to only include councillors as members of the committee, and state that council staff, external bodies and members of the public are welcome to attend. And the second recommendation is that Councillor Karansky, as the chairperson of the City Lifestyle Committee, be added as a member of the Hooning Task Force.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, can I just ask a question of clarity?
You may, and then I'll go to Councillor Revan.
Thank you. Katie, is it appropriate that members of the public be in attendance with the police, etc., when they're talking about confidential information? Because historically, that's the sort of stuff that I can remember happening in the advisory groups. The police would actually disclose to councillors very confidential stuff, and even what I saw in the safety camera room, I had to be confidential about where it was, when it was, even though I know exactly where it was and when it was. Because you can't disclose stuff. So my concern with this recommendation, it refers to the public being involved, and that actually concerns me.
Through the chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor Bradley, and that was why I just left my chair to confer with Nick as well about that. I just wonder with that, Councillor Heremiah, whether there's an alternative way that we could make that work and ensure that we can keep the community updated with the great work that the Hooning Action Task Force is doing, because the logistics of informing members of public, having them come along, particularly in a COVID-safe environment as well, So perhaps with Councillor Heremeyer's indulgence, perhaps we could remove that and think of an alternative way to keep engaging and communicating with the community.
Councillor Hermeyer, would you like to respond?
Can we edit the amendment to, let's get it up, to instead of saying, subject to an amendment. Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, we've amended it. I think that's a really good point. Thanks for letting us know, Councillor Bradley.
Councillor Evan, you raised your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I could suggest a proposed amendment that the external bodies, I understand Councillor Heremeyer's concerns about having members of the organisation, as staff members from the organisation as voting members, but I think it sends a very strong signal if the police are actually voting members, so that they're on equal footing with council in this committee, and it shows that they're valued members and that their position is meaningful within the task force. So I'd like to ask if, and I'm completely in Councillor Heremeyer's hands here because it is his amendment, that if he's willing to amend it so that only councillors and members of external bodies such as QPS
Can we,
voting members.
I think that's a good point.
Because I understood from your conversation that the only specific group of people that you wanted to remove from having voting rights was council staff, because it's quite unusual to have members of the public service voting with members of the body politic. Whereas having external members in something that is a collaborative effort would probably still make sense.
Just before you respond to that, Councillor Hermeyer, I just point out that what we could do is go back to the original recommendation and have council officers removed from the original recommendation. I don't know if that gets you where you want to go.
So to respond to Councillor Raven, I think that's a good point, and maybe just in that amendment, just so we can move on to the next thing, just put subject only to only include councillors and a member from the Queensland Police Service Logan District Office. So we have that QPS vote there if you think that will get buy-in.
I wouldn't recommend limiting it to Logan District Office. What if you got statewide support from the Commissioner?
If I may, I might just ask for some feedback from the Director. Be back with you in just a moment. Apologies for this break in transmission. Okay, so what we're talking about here, Katie, would you actually help me work through this? So if we go back to the original amendment, the original recommendation. If we get that up, we'll get that on. Well, just getting something up on the board in front of you so you can have a look.
Just changed it to just, instead of saying who's included, just say who's excluded, just council officers.
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is, rather than talking about who's included, talking about who's excluded, whether we're looking at excluding council officers from the task force. Would that satisfy the intent?
I think this is a really simple thing. This is membership. You state who are members and who are eligible as members. That's normal governance. So I think I don't think it's a good idea to exclude certain things. I think maybe if we just state.
Councillor Hermeyer, aren't they in the terms of reference though?
Yeah, they're in terms of reference. So maybe we can reference in the terms of reference 8.1 item I and item 1 and item 7. So that means that we'll have councillors and then 4 and then 3 Queensland Police external members.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think we can just remove the council officers from the terms of reference as observers, and then I think that recommendation works because it really then just refers to the fact that the members of the task force are the councillors, those external agencies that are listed in the terms of reference, and we're just removing the council officers as members. They're just now listed as observers. And I think that recommendation supports that, and we can amend the terms of reference to reflect that.
Could you please elaborate on section 8 of item 8.1?
Can I just put out there what we could potentially do, if you like, is we can take this offline and we can bring it back to full council next week.
I think that's a good
we want to
idea.
iron out the detail in the background. I think we're all moving towards. So we actually have. I might actually defer to Councillor Raven here because we have a couple of motions that are in train right at the moment, and I would like the opportunity to wind that up for today and then move this to ordinary council next week. How do you suggest I move forward?
Happy to move to defer the report until full council.
Okay, do I have a seconder for the deferral? Councillor Hall, could I see a show of hands? That is unanimously supported. Councillor Haramiah, can you please work with the director and also the manager between now and next week, and we'll revisit this report next week. I don't want to take away for a moment of what the great work is that you guys have been doing in the background. I'm really excited to see this coming to council. Thank you very much, Nick, and thank you for your patience. Do we have any questions for the Community Services Manager before he heads off? I'd like to just say a huge thank you, Nick, and I'd like to acknowledge Keely, who's with Nick today, and the great work that Keely does. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the task force take off and be able to utilise Keely's great skills as part of this project as well. So thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on. We're going to move now to... Councillors, if I refer you to page 3 of your reports, we're going to look at the proposed increase in penalty for drivers parking without a permit in disability parking spaces. And we're just inviting our City Standards and Animal Care Manager, Mr Shane Mansfield, up. And we have an apology today from Adrian Taylor, who is also going to present to committee, but Adrian's unfortunately been unwell. So we've got Shane flying solo today. Councillors, do we have any conflicts of interest that we need to record? There being no conflicts of interest, I'll ask the manager to present his report. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, Councillor. Good morning, Councillors. This report is a positive. Whilst it's talking about an increase in penalty, it has the very good purpose of only proposing for the increase to be where drivers park in disability parking bays without a permit. The reason why we're doing this is specifically because the state has increased the penalty in its legislation. Logan City Council prescribes its penalty in the local law, and consequently we need to amend our local law, and that's a defined process under the Local Government Act to increase our penalty under the parking local law. The penalty is proposed to be increased from 2 penalty units to 4 penalty units, and the report starts that process of formalising a council policy position to increase the penalty unit. This ensures good governance in terms of Queensland Police have also the authority to issue similar parking infringements across the city, and there would be a dilemma if they were issuing higher penalties compared to Logan City Council enforcement officers. Importantly and critically, it aligns to our Access and Inclusion Plan 2019-2022, ensuring suitable parking is available and enforced across the city with respect to disability parking spaces. Excuse me. Open for questions. This is the start of a process under the Local Government Act if elected members choose to make this position. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Shane, can we go further?
Sorry, Councillor Raven?
Can we go further? Can we make it 8, 10 penalty units? Do we have to go 4?
My recommendation is to align to the state. We would be not in alignment with state legislation, and consequently, as I explained, Queensland Police would be issuing lower penalties than local government in our case.
My experience is that Queensland Police rarely issue parking infringements, and I think the community would be strongly in support of us going even further, because nobody likes to see somebody without a disability sticker parking in a disability space. But I accept your advice, and I'm happy to move the report when the debate is concluded.
Can I just ask, Shane, we talked about penalty units. Are we able to assign a dollar value to that? What does that look like, so the public who are listening at home?
For 2 penalty units, it's $266. That's currently, and 4 penalty units is $533 per infringement notice. which is a significant penalty amount by infringement notice.
Thank you. Councillor Heremiah, do you have a question?
Through the chair, when was the last time we enforced the parking in a disability spot without a permit? When was the last time Logan City Council enforced an infringement notice?
I'd have to take that on notice, but it would be very recent. We have a team of parking enforcement officers. Disability parking bays are on road reserves, in shopping centres. We have power under our local law to enforce off-street regulated parking areas that are defined in our subordinate local law. We're a leading local government in that respect.
Thanks.
Through the chair, can I just add in, Shane, would you confirm that our officers are patrolling this sort of parking every single day?
Every single day? Near to, yes. Yes. I can find out the last ticket that was issued if councillors require that, certainly.
How many officers do we have patrolling this across the city?
We have 5 community parking officers. They split between dedicated traffic areas across the city, school parking patrol programs, but also they attend shopping centres on a program basis as well as attending to defined disability parking bays on road reserves.
Thank you. Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The misconception is that people deliberately do this all the time. I can tell you now that does not occur. The way the layout is in shopping centres, cars next to each other, a car moves out, a car then moves in. People very often don't see the writing on the ground. In so many cases, and I'll be honest, I've done it. I've parked in a disabled spot, not by deliberate measures, by mistake. But the fact that I never saw what was on the ground, it might be wet, the signs are not very visible, but also just the way the cars are laid out and they move out and you move in, you just don't see it all the time. Now, my concern is that we follow the crowd, but these fines to the average punter out there is absolutely financially debilitating. I don't know, I'm against the grain here because everyone sees that everyone that parks in a disabled spot is doing it deliberately because they want to walk to the shopping centre by the quickest, shortest means. That is not the what I consider to be the real outcome. We can all get angry and mad, but I'm quite confident that the majority of people that do this do it by accident and do not see that that very dark blue painted symbol on the ground, particularly when it's wet. Just being mindful that there's always another way of looking at things, and I don't see this. I know, talkback radio and such say, oh, these people are all terrible. They're deliberately doing it because they're lazy. I don't think that's the case at all. But I just thought I'd give my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I'll ask if Shane has a response.
Certainly. Disability parking bays are wider. They're quite reasonably and adequately signed and painted. It is the responsibility of the driver to park correctly. If there is anything unclear, we work very well with our roads infrastructure planning branch and also with the shopping centre operators to clarify if there is any issue with the identification of a disability parking bay. For instance, if the paint has suddenly become dilapidated or not easy to see, etc., we would communicate with the shopping centre and ensure that's rectified.
Some of those shopping centres might have been built 30 years ago under the original conditions, and they haven't, because they haven't put a development application in, council can't enforce a change of conditions, and they'll continue to have those car places in place. And I'm talking about the Hyperdome. You know, some of those haven't been replaced. Now, I know they've had development applications, but some of their parking spots are still thin, not the big ones.
I'm not aware of any location where there are disability parking bays that are not signed or painted correctly to identify to the driver.
Mr Mayor, if you
I'm
come
happy
across
to
any of those,
communicate that.
I'd appreciate if you could forward them to Shane for some further investigation. That would be awesome. I note that Councillor Lane's chafing at the bit. Councillor Lane?
No, I was just enjoying the mayor. Look, I think the biggest thing is we talk about whether or not the officers are out patrolling. In Division 2, they certainly are. And thank you very much for that, Shane. And where there are problems or concerns over parking signage, we have had some good outcomes. I'm tired of seeing people get into disability parking spots and get out, jump out and run into the shops. I don't know what their condition is. I don't know what their medical history is, so I don't make judgments. But in the back of your mind, you really do. And if they don't have a sticker, wear the brunt of it. If someone gets out of a car with stitches and a drip attached to them, I don't think there's anyone who's going to fight that fine in any way, shape or form. But I think that this is a step in the right direction for sure for people with disabilities.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you so much. I am very much in support of this recommendation and in support of patrolling regularly. I've sat at Logan North Library. It used to be one of my regular mobile office sites. I'd be sitting there for 2 hours. Lots of people come and go, and I can tell you, hand on heart, the amount of people that parked in the disability car park that did not have a sticker on was crazy. And I'm sure there's footage there, there's CCTV cameras, so there would be evidence of people coming and going and, you know, not having the appropriate stickers on. And I know that that has been patrolled in the past because there have been lots of complaints from people who do genuinely have a disability and need access to the library or the pool or whatever, and they cannot find a park because there's someone else parked there. So I'm very much in support of this.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Hall.
I'd just like to add towards the Mayor's sentiment in regards to this. A while back, when my father was still alive, he had mesothelioma. I remember an occasion where I decided to take my father to the movies, and I took him in my car, and that was fine. Now, there was a disabled park. I decided to park there. Unfortunately, we hadn't remembered to bring his sticker, but, you know, I needed to get my father close to the cinema so that, you know, he could have a short walk. So I parked there and I helped my father to the cinema. I walked back to my car and had already gotten the fine. Now, I was happy to pay that fine and you know, given 100 times occasion, I'd do it again because, you know, you got to do these things for your family if you have to. But this is just case in point. You know, I wasn't maliciously going there to take the park from someone else. I parked there for my father. And this quite often happens to be scenarios that you punish someone even if they're doing the right thing sometimes. So, you know, and I think there's much worse things we could be fining people with in harsher ways than this, because it is a fair fine anyway if you do get caught in disability parking and you don't have the sticker. But, you know, it's not always the circumstances that we believe, or some people perhaps would say.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Councillor Hall. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, through the chair. There is an opportunity, if you were to receive this fine, to have it looked at and corrected if the parking was wrong.
That is correct, Councillor. We have a review process, a very expedient review process. We aim to consider the review application and respond to the applicant as soon as possible.
Thank you. So, through the chair, I support the increase of the penalty rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bannon, did you have your hand up before? No, thank you. And is that the Mayor with his hand up, Mr Mayor?
Yep, thank you. Through the chair, does this give us an opportunity to have a differential system of penalty fine because I think we're now in the era of being a little bit fairer than where we are at the moment, in that, let's just say Lachlan Power parks in one of these spots and gets a ticket, and a pensioner who's on minimum pension rates gets a parking ticket for the same offence. Do you think it's a little bit inequitable that they still have to pay the same fine? I think we should start bringing our system into the new century, where people who are on a pension, people who are on a obviously sometimes a welfare pension, they have their fine, if they can produce a card to indicate that they are, then they only pay half the fee.
Respectfully, Mr Mayor, we're talking about the anomalies to the recommendations here. The recommendations.
Yeah, I know, but it's still looking at the fee, and I think if we bring in a differential fee on this, and then we can bring in a differential fee for everything else, because I think life is unfair out there, and I think people who are doing it tough, they should be paying less than those multi-billionaires out there. I think that we should start looking at a differential system.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With all due respect to the Mayor, the suggestions that we've got here that I didn't mean to do it so I shouldn't be fined, or I'm wealthy so I can afford to pay more, that drifts a long way away from where we should be as a council. If you can't be bothered to make sure that the park you're in is a legal park to park in, then you are going to be fined. Whether you are on a small income or a large income, you have not taken due care in parking safely. And you are taking that park away from someone who, for whatever reason, has been determined to have a disability, who needs to be able to park closely. For you to say that the majority of people who park illegally in disability parks are doing so by accident, and that they should be able to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disadvantage somebody else, so please don't fine me, is just a ridiculous suggestion. You can come down to any one of my schools. There is a taxi driver who deliberately parks in a disability park every day, then parks people in who have disabilities if they get there before him, and abuses them for using that park. You're telling me that guy should be able to write to council and say, oops, I didn't know it was a disability park, and then not have to deal with the fine.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. That resident does have the opportunity to write to council and appeal that fine if they would like to. So they certainly are welcome to.
It's a taxi driver, but that's okay.
The taxi driver. But
he doesn't live in Logan. I know he doesn't live in Logan.
Thank you for the passion. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. It shouldn't make any difference who you are. If you don't have a sticker, if you don't have a disability sticker, you don't park in a disability car park. The amount of times I get filthy looks because I park in a disability car park, I jump out of my car, my kids jump out of the car, but they do not stick around long enough to see me get my disabled mother out of my car and put her in a wheelchair, it's really quite annoying. I only use it when my mum's in my car, but it stays in my car, but I don't use it unless my poor old mum's with me, and that sort of thing. So it really shouldn't make any difference. If you don't have a sticker, you don't park in there. Yeah. Same thing happens at my school, and I hope it happens at my local shopping centre as well. The amount of times I walk past them going, they don't have a sticker, what are you doing? It's not a good enough excuse, Mayor Power.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox, and I am keen to start to close in on the debate. Councillor Bannon, you had something you wanted to add?
No, I just want to close it. I don't know why we're debating this.
Councillors, do I have someone to move the report? Councillor Murphy, can I have a seconder? Councillor Bannon, could I please see with a show of hands those who support the recommendations? And that is unanimously supported with the exception of the Mayor.
Madam Chair, I'm voting against this because it's not a differential penalty system that I'd like to see. Thank you.
Because he wants to be lenient on people who don't take due care.
I beg your pardon. Councillor Heremiah, did you not have your hand up? I'm sorry.
No, I'm voting against.
You're voting against. So just to be clear for the record,
I'm voting against as well.
I do think people may have shifted their position, but just to be clear, so we'll go through it. So Councillor Bradley in favour, the Mayor opposed, Councillor Lane in favour, Councillor Russell in favour, Councillor Raven in favour, Councillor Hall opposed, Councillor Fraser in favour, Councillor Heremiah opposed, Councillor Bannon in favour, Councillor Stemp in favour, Councillor Wilcox in favour, Councillor Murphy in favour, and I too am in favour. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, before we move on, actually, have we got any general business for the manager? Sorry, Shane. Shane, have you got any general business for us?
No specific GB, thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Shane.
Thank you, councillors.
Councillors, I'd now like to draw your attention to page 40 of the City Lifestyles Committee report. The next item on the agenda is item 6.1, which is the Waterford Rugby League Football Club clubhouse redevelopment of Nofby Park at Meadowbrook. And I will invite the Sports, Leisure and Facilities Manager, Mr Nigel Brown, to come up and speak to his report. While Mr Brown's making his way up, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare? There being none, I will ask Nigel when he's ready to present his report.
Thank you, through the chair. So this report has come forward on the back of a GB item requesting the report to be prepared for a future meeting around the funding arrangements for the Waterford Demons Rugby League Clubhouse. I think the report's fairly clear. There's three main areas. It outlines the facility upgrades that are being undertaken down in that precinct, the requirements for demolition and the requirements for a resolution to enable the demolition of some of those assets, and also details the funding arrangements associated with that. So on the basis of efficiency, I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillors, silence. Do we have any questions? Anything from the area councillor? Oh, Councillor Hall.
I'd just like to speak towards the report. This is something that's been asked upon me a fair bit from my community, and it's a very important step to updating the amenities for that park. The particular club itself has around 650 members that use that facility, and basically what this is asking for is to demolish the old building infrastructure that is there, which is no longer up to date, and from the ashes the phoenix will arise, and we'll have a beautiful new world standard clubhouse at the park. And this, my local rugby club, the Demons, will be overjoyed when that's put into place. But basically this is setting all that in motion, because there's been a fair bit behind this, including the funding and where it's come from, where it's going to, and this will solidify those arrangements and make sure that this commences and happens.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I think this is quite an exciting development from the group, and I'm sure that they'll be thrilled to see the sod turning. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is a project that's been long awaited, and one would dare to say long overdue. The divisional councillor 2 times before Councillor Hall have made commitments towards this site and never delivered, and now we're finally getting there. So it's great to see when you've got a fresh new councillor, how things just start happening straight away. I was very happy to contribute to this project through the Division 5 Infrastructure Fund last term, and I was speaking to the club just yesterday to make sure that they were happy with all of the planning work that council had done, and I wanted to pass on their appreciation for the hard work that David's been doing with them to make sure that things do line up with what they're expecting, and they're very comfortable with what's being removed. I'm not sure they're going to be able to call the tin bar the pig pen anymore when it becomes a beautiful new facility, but I'm sure they'll come up with a great name for it instead.
Thank you, councillors. Do I have any other comments? Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, thank you. I did see this facility on our tour of Division 6 with Councillor Hall just recently, and I asked the question about whether the hospital staff still utilise the car park and the club get some funding from that. So I'm not sure how much that is, but hopefully that will help sustain them. I'm just wondering, on page 42, where it has where the proposed new clubhouse will go, and the car park is earmarked there. Is the car park funded in this, or is it just the clubhouse?
So through the chair, the report identifies some other improvements that are proposed, including a car park project. At the moment, we are awaiting the advice from the federal government around the local roads and community infrastructure program, which allocates $500,000 to the car park and access road component. So we are hopeful that that will be undertaken separately from the funding for the clubhouse.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions from councillors? Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, through you, Madam Chair. So this project, obviously the previous councillor for the area as well as the previous councillor for the area put in money, and the state government has put in money. Is there any, I know that there were some concerns around Underwood Park with when state puts in money and sometimes the facilities don't meet the required council or preferred layouts. Is that happening here, or is this a completely 100% agreed upon project?
So through the chair, there will be a PCG established under the grant deed with the state government, which will have departmental representatives on that group, and they will obviously have the opportunity. The grant deed will be clearly identify what outcomes the grant funding is available for, but they'll certainly be involved in that process and have sign-off. The other part, which I'll just refer to as well, is there will be a community engagement plan developed. There's a draft plan already developed, and that's to ensure that throughout the various stages of planning that the Demons Club themselves have got input and can have that buy-in throughout the process. So,
and the second part of that question is the current councillor going to have to dip into local infrastructure program money to finalise this project, or is this is the end, it's all done and ready to rock and roll?
Yes, so through the chair, the project has been based on the concept plans and a QS estimate of 1.8 million, and so that is the project budget for this. So the answer is no. It won't be asked, Councillor.
Thank you, Nigel. Do we have any further questions for the manager? There being no further questions, the recommendations are on the board in front of you, councillors. Can I have someone to move the recommendation? Councillor Hall. Can I have a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Lane.
No, sorry, I was just rubbing my nose.
Sorry, may I have a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Raven. Thank you, Councillor Raven. Can I have all those in favour please raise your hand? And I'm pleased to say that one's unanimously supported. Congratulations, Councillor Hall. That's an exciting project.
Thank you.
Councillors, we'll now be jumping around a little bit more. Just before we move on, my apologies. Forgive me, Nigel. Have we got any GB for Nigel? I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. Nigel, do you have any general business for us? No. Thank you so much, Nigel. My apologies, councillors. Councillors, if you would like to refer to your agendas, page 61, we're looking at item 7.1, and I'll ask the Parks Manager, Mr Brad White, and I'm not sure, is Brent here as well today, and Brent Dowden to come down. Brent is, of course, our Parks Operations and Maintenance Program Leader. Before we get underway, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to report? Councillor Stemp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, Councillor Miriam Stemp, declare a perceived conflict of interest in relation to item 7.1 of the City Lifestyle Committee due to the following reason. I'm a Logan City Council Parks volunteer, being actively involved in the Coonabeer Bush Care Group for some time, and more recently involved in the Coonabeer Trail Care Group, as mentioned in the report Background and Purpose. And this report relates to the amendment of a local law. I've determined that this personal interest is not of sufficient significance that will lead me to making a decision on the matter that is contrary to the public interest. I'll best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest of the whole of Council's area by participating in the discussion and voting on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Stemp. Councillor Stemp has declared a perceived conflict of interest in this item. Can I ask if I have someone to move the motion that Councillor Stemp has a perceived... Just before we do, Councillor Raven has a question. Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question isn't actually for Councillor Stemp, it's for the manager. Is the organisation that Councillor Stemp volunteers for a council-controlled and owned organisation, or is it a community organisation?
Through the chair, it's our volunteer program.
So it's council-run?
Yes.
Thank you.
It is ours. So further to Councillor Stemp declaring a perceived conflict of interest, have I got someone to move that Councillor Stemp has a perceived conflict of interest? That motion has failed. Is there anyone here to move that Councillor Stemp has a real conflict of interest? That motion has failed. Can we please have some advice on whether Councillor Stemp has a conflict of interest at all?
So move that she has no conflict of interest.
And so we will move that Councillor Stemp has no conflict of interest. Councillor Raven has moved. Councillor Lane has seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hand that Councillor Stemp has no conflict of interest and can remain in the meeting. That's all supported with the exemption of Councillor Stemp. And may I ask for a reason, Councillor Raven?
As the organisation that Councillor Stemp volunteers for is a government-controlled organisation, it does not amount to a conflict of interest.
Thank you, everyone. I'll now refer to our Parks Manager and Parks Operations and Maintenance Program Leader to speak to this report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. Parks are presenting a third report in a local law amendment process for your consideration and endorsement today. The local law amendment process takes 3 reports to council. The first 2 were submitted during the time of administration, and this is the third one that presents the outcomes of state interest checks and community consultation. So as the report indicates, our state interest checks came back from our state agencies and they came back with a green light, so all clear from that perspective. The community consultation process provided us with 2 points of feedback, and neither of those points of feedback were considered to change the proposal put in front of you with the amendment. And I guess just a little bit of history of how we got here. So prior to the reports going up, Parks Branch undertook an 18-month project to really review our volunteer program and try to revitalise that program. We did that through creating a working group with our volunteers and staff that work together in this volunteer space. So the outcomes of that working group were threefold, essentially. So we had some tweaks to the framework in which we work under. We created a new volunteer manual, and we also created a new digital portal that allows our staff and volunteers to interact, communicate and share information. So the outcome of the tweak in the framework essentially took one of our subgroups and changed the title in which they worked under. Because we did that, that had a flow-on effect of needing to do an administrative change to our local law which referenced them. So this report is put forward just to make that administrative change. The new framework's been in place since January, and we've had some awesome feedback from our volunteers. It's working quite well. It's been a little bit lumpy with COVID. We haven't been able to do as much work in the volunteer space as we've wanted to, but that's now kicked off again, and I think everyone's really happy about that as well. So in that space, everything's going well, and yeah, our staff are really excited about the project and getting back involved with the volunteers. So I'm happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
Thank you, Brad. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Raven.
Just a comment in that I completely understand where the staff are coming from and why they've taken these steps. When I first became a councillor, I met a resident who lived very close to DeMayo Park. Tony Hall knows him, and he would report to me constantly because he lived across the road. Anytime there was issues with the park, and he was literally caring for the park. That's what he was doing. There were often graffiti and litter issues, minor things that meant that park was very well maintained because he was there and he was providing that custodianship. The ability to say to him, would you like to be an honorary park ranger for the good work that you do, meant a lot to him. And I don't even think he ended up doing the paperwork to become an honorary park ranger, but just the offer that you could say to someone, because of how much you care for this park, council is interested in getting you involved in this program. It's sad that you lose the term honorary, but the term park care is very appropriate, so I do support it because that's exactly what Phil was doing. He was caring for the park that was near his home, and he did a great service to the community by doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Do we have any other questions or comments? Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, thank you. I've had a number of constituents over the years who have contributed enormously as honorary park rangers. Unfortunately, some of them are now deceased, but they are invaluable members of the public who report all sorts of things. I just want to make sure that going forward, and I understand it's a change, but going forward that we do recognise those people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Did you want to respond to that, Brad?
Yeah, through the chair, I just wanted to, I guess, reassure councillors that the mandate for each of those programs really hasn't changed too much. The title's changed and the removal of regulatory powers to volunteers has changed, but the rest of what we're encouraging in park, we certainly support.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from any councillors? Councillors, the recommendations are on the board in front of you. Can I please have someone to move the recommendations? Councillor Bannon. Have I got someone to second the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. And with a show of hands, please raise your hand if you're in support of the recommendation. And that is unanimously supported. Thank you very much, Brad and Brent. Do you have any queries for the manager, councillors? Gentlemen, do you have anything that you'd like to report? Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. Okay, councillors, as I mentioned, we're jumping about a little bit today, so if you'd like to move to page 8 of your agendas, we'll be moving on to item 5.1, which is the proposed Logan Art Gallery 2021 exhibition program. And I'm pleased to invite Libraries and Creative Industries Manager Annette Turner and our Art Gallery Coordinator Michael Wardell up to the front. Before we get any underway, do any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare? There being no conflicts of interest, Annette, please present your report.
Good afternoon, councillors. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon. We'll be as brief as possible, understanding you're on a tight timeline. The purpose of today's report is to present the proposed 2021 exhibition program at the Logan Art Gallery. It's our pleasure each year to share the exhibitions that are proposed for exhibition for the community to enjoy. The proposed program is consistent with Logan Art Gallery's exhibition policy, which is a policy of council, which explores the diversity of Logan artists and also brings in touring exhibitions for the community to enjoy. I'm joined here this afternoon with our lovely art gallery coordinator, Michael Wardell. And Michael's going to take you through the program while I change the slides. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair, councillors. In January, exhibitions opening 22nd of January, Cedar Vale artist Ronell Reed's exhibition of paintings celebrating the diversity of animals in Logan City. Eden Landings artist Richard Connor's abstract paintings explore the 4 elements of earth, fire, water and air. Helena Jackson Lloyd's new paintings were made in response to an artist in residency at Curtin Springs Cattle Station. Woodridge artist Lee Shu's new series of oil paintings centre on people enjoying food and sharing meals. And Rochdale South artist Chloe Wigg's abstract landscapes highlight resilience in the environment and the people who inhabit it, drawing on her own experience of living with a disability. Opening 5th of March, Unmasked Shapeshifters mixes traditional craft and new technologies to create an immersive exhibition. Photographer Shihab Udin has worked with local families to develop this exhibition celebrating family and diversity. And Workshop Wonders is our annual exhibition of student works chosen from the Logan Art Gallery workshop programme. Opening the 23rd of April, Rochdale South artist Lana Bjorgsen draws on her background in weaving and textile arts to paint the forest in Daisy Hill Conservation Park as a rich tapestry of pattern and light. Michelle Hamer's new series of hand-stitched and hand-drawn works explore the common use of threatening language in everyday life. First Nations artists Colleen Sam and Keith Werrabone's new exhibition of paintings and furniture feature untold stories from the Kalkadoo people. This exhibition features original illustrations from Colin Sam's children's books, Mini Miners Finding Ghosts. Opening 11th of June, Cornubria artist Christopher Maddox collects and digitally manipulates satellite imagery to make his own unique artworks. Rochdale South artist Yu Chao Du's exhibition documents the process of designing a major public artwork in the Ziti Park in the city of Shantou in China. First Nations Crestmead artist Cara Mangtalo, first major solo exhibition, incorporates a series of prints, sculptures, ceramics, paintings and weavings revealing untold stories of Australia. Our annual World Environment Day posters brings together a collection of vibrant artworks designed by Logan's young artists. Opening 30th of July, Slacks Creek artist Dean Feetensby presents a series of vibrant acrylic and aerosol-based paintings inspired by his daily walks around the neighbourhood. And the Stencil Art Prize is a biannual touring exhibition showcasing the world's biggest, best and most daring artists that use this technique. Opening 11th of September, Art Waves is the annual art exhibition of work sourced from the creative talents high school students in the Logan region. And 2021 will be our 30th Art Waves exhibition in Logan. That takes the whole gallery. Opening in 22nd of October, in her first solo exhibition, First Nation Benlee artist Cara Shields explores her cultural connections to the Kamilaroi and Wiradjuri countries. Cornubria artist Samuel Tupou's new series of work seeks out patterns found in nature, inspired by Pacific Island tapa cloth designs and mat weaving. Another Cornubria artist, Barry Fitzpatrick, presents a new series of paintings hoping to build awareness of the importance of biodiversity in nature. And Out of Art Waves is an annual exhibition by an artist selected from the previous year's Art Waves to be mentored to present their first solo exhibition in the Young People's Gallery. Opening the 3rd of December, Logan Treasures highlights pre-Christmas the best of Logan's artists, crafts workers and designers. And the Dobell Drawing Prize is a major touring exhibition of contemporary Australian drawings.
In summary, the proposed 2021 exhibition program adheres to Council's exhibition policy for the gallery, while it also nurtures and supports the diversity of Logan artists' work across the city and has ensured that there is a wide-ranging reach of community interest presented within the 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Michael. My goodness, we've got so many incredibly talented people right across our city, and what an amazing array of artwork we're lucky enough to be able to showcase. I have a couple of questions from the floor. We'll lead with Councillor Lane.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for letting us know what's coming up. We had a cause to have a conversation around a young artist, Jake Moss, who grew up in Woodridge and wanted to give back through the art gallery, a showing of his art. And Jake was given some pathways by the Logan Art Gallery that he can take. My question is for those young people who, obviously you set your showings up quite a distance in advance, what opportunities are available for them to actually give back, show and promote the fact that you can achieve through art out of the local community?
Sure. Through the Chair, Logan Art Gallery has a very long history of supporting young artists and particularly mentoring them and coaching their first solo shows and then continuing their career. So Art Waves is one of those that started more than 30 years ago, and there were exhibition opportunities elsewhere in the city even before the gallery was built 25 years ago. So really long history. It's part of the program that the staff really enjoy mentoring and coaching and working with our young artists. And you'll see, particularly in this program, there's lots of content by young people. There are alternative spaces which we can support our artists in exhibiting in the city. We have the Logan Artist Gallery. We also have spaces available through the libraries, which we've put up shows in the past. And we're very happy to support artists in that way. In the past, we've also worked with shop owners in having exhibitions in unused shop fronts, and that's been a great way to enliven areas across the city also.
Well, that led me to my second part. Thanks, Madam Chair. Is there any capacity to work with local businesses and cafes to actually extend the breadth of how we can get work out into the community by offering them some of the artwork that's available through local talent? Is that an objective, or is that something you've considered?
Through the chair, we have worked with cafes in the past. Those who would be familiar with Christopher's at Daisy Hill was an early adopter of having beautiful exhibitions by local artists. You might be familiar with our Logan Live program, which is a partnership with local cafes and eateries and restaurants where we've matched up local musicians with local cafes for a month-long festival of music. So it's certainly something that we could open-heartedly explore if there's enough interest from our business owners. Obviously, they're doing it tough right now, and it'd be great to talk to my colleagues who are working on COVID recovery as a potential idea going forward. So thank you for that.
Councillor Lane, that sounds like a really great idea. So I welcome hearing a bit more from the team about how we could potentially advance that. Any further questions, Councillor Lane?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, just a question in that process. What about, for example, aged care facilities? I know Arcare have got a community room that apparently the community can utilise, but my understanding when they first came to council looking for endorsement of their project, that they were willing to have art exhibitions in there as well. So hopefully that could be extended to other facilities too, not just cafes. So I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, through the chair. We have worked with aged care facilities in the city to host exhibitions and also little prizes that their residents have taken part of. We've been really active in that space. We've also partnered with some of the aged care facilities to access some grant funding to help them develop arts programs for their residents. Right now, as you understand, the aged care facilities have minimum contact with people outside of their community, but we have continued to deliver our home library service to the centres as a contactless service. So there's certainly ways we could explore for those who are interested.
I might talk offline to you about the particular one I'm referring to, but my original question was in relation to the Logan Treasures, 3rd of December. Are they items for sale?
Yes, through the chair, yes. They're where our gallery store extends out into other areas in the gallery. They are all items by Logan artists and designers, and it gives a platform for our designers to be able to sell their wares quite affordably, and that's an economic initiative that the gallery took on many years ago.
I really think that should be spelt out. It's something that could be promoted, I think, going forward.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from any other councillors? I'll go to Councillor Herrenmeyer next.
Thanks for the presentation. It was really interesting. Are you aware of the sales figures for the Logan Art Gallery over the past financial year?
Through the chair, I can certainly get that information for you. Unfortunately, the gallery has been closed for part of that financial year, so we're a little bit down on income. It's not a huge amount of income because we give majority of the money to the artists themselves and only take a very small portion of that income to actually, support the administration side behind the sales. So we can certainly get that to you. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all the artists who contributed to this gallery. Art sits very close to home for me. at a young age, I had a lot of trouble reading and writing, and I found artwork to be my main outlet of communication, thoughts and feelings. Also, I have the Logan Lee Artist Association in my division as well. Art is so important in terms of preserving our culture and our identity, and it's only through celebrating our artists that we continue to preserve our culture, because it's long been known throughout history that some of the few things that we know about other cultures and cultures come past is left from their artwork. And hopefully through these galleries and celebrating our artists, the culture of Logan will be preserved.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any other comments? Councillors, the recommendations may soon be on the board ahead of you. Thank you, thank you. Can I have someone to move the recommendations? Councillor Stem, can I have a seconder? Councillor Hall, all those in favour, please raise your hand. And that's unanimously supported. And just before we go to the manager for GB, I just wanted to say I'm sure that all councillors have noticed, I don't know how you could miss it, but the amazing artwork from Auntie Peggy Tidyman that's actually gone up on the side of our art gallery. It's absolutely stunning and just adds so much colour to the gallery. I think it's tremendous. But do we have any GB for the manager? Thank you. Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually going to speak on that, and Auntie Peggy came to my mobile office some weeks ago and showed me on her phone what it was going to look like, but it really does pop from the art gallery, so well done on choosing that. I've already flagged that I want to, with Annette, that I would like to do a big mural also under the M1 where Fitzgerald Avenue comes out, highlighting Springwood. I'd love it to be of an Aboriginals or descendants interpretation of Springwood. I've also spoken to Councillor Russell to see if she'd be interested in doing the other side for Slacks Creek, so it would be absolutely awesome to see that come to fruition.
Do we have any other
feedback?
Do we have any other GB for the manager? Annette, do you have any GB for us?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Michael. It's been great to have the presentation. Thank you. Good to see you both. Councillors, I now draw your attention to page 165 of your committee reports. This is item 9.2, which is looking at our event strategy 2020 to 2025. And I'll invite Beck Smith, who's our marketing and events manager, acting, to come up to the front here. In addition, we'll have our acting events program leader, Kate Ryan. Just before we get underway, I would just note that this is a confidential item, and in part, and I will ask councillors to consider whether we need to go into confidential, but while you're considering that, I will ask if any councillors have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare. Fantastic. Being no conflicts of interest, Beck, I thank you for so much of this report being actually in the public realm. And if we find ourselves venturing into dangerous territory, please let us know. But we might begin with you addressing the report so the public can partake. And yeah, I look forward to hearing it. Thanks, Beck.
Through the chair, good afternoon everyone. I will confirm that the confidential component of the report is commercial in confidence research to do with the city, and there was an agreement in place with the consultant that information would remain commercial in confidence. We're pleased to bring this report to the table today. It signifies approximately 2 years' worth of work with regards to defining a clear event strategy on behalf of the city. One of the holding points for us in terms of seeking endorsement was we did want to take the opportunity to consult with councillors as to what they were looking to see on behalf of the city and on behalf of their division in terms of events. We've completed the majority of those consultations, very similar sentiment across the board, which was really pleasing. The strategy that we're putting forward today, we will take the report as read, but I would like to highlight that the framework that this puts in place for us has a user-friendly COVID lens and a user-friendly non-COVID lens. We're obviously facing some unusual circumstances at the moment with regards to the events that we're able to deliver. We're spending a lot of time supporting the community in how they safely deliver their events at the moment, and we're putting together a restructured events program based on strategic framework under the strategy, but also under the COVID requirements. I'm happy to take any questions from the floor with regards to the report.
Councillor Raven.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 185 of our agenda, which I don't have open in front of me, so I can't tell you which part of your report it is.
Okay.
I think it was talking to vision, and there's a sentence that confused me because it says, in 5 years, Logan will be the emerging event destination in the southeast region and positively positioned in terms of ... And then what's beneath it isn't a list of things that we would be in terms of, it's then a list of something ...
Okay.
Because I was really keen on knowing what that was. I read it, I'm like, this is good. Oh wait, this is ...
It's going to be really hard. I'll just take a moment to find that there.
All good.
Page 185. It's always good to keep the councillors wanting for more.
Where do we want to be?
So you're talking about the top of the page.
Oh, right, okay. That is a very insightful observation.
One I'm happy to make. If we could find out what that is and circulate to councillors, that'd be fantastic. Otherwise, I think the report was fantastic and very exciting. I like that you, it wasn't just about council events anymore. You're actually trying to wrap around community events as well, which is something I think we definitely had a blind spot for previously. And hopefully now with the extra support from council, everything will be able to hum along harmoniously.
What it may appear to be is that the vision is actually sitting under the way that that will be achieved. That might just be a flip of the... Nice to know you've read it.
No, it's just proving it.
Thank you.
We're happy
Thank
to
you,
come back on
Councillor
that one.
Raven.
It looks like it just needs a flip.
Do we have any other questions? Councillor Bradley.
I think it is a format.
Thank you. I suppose my question is about the community events and going forward, obviously, with all the COVID-19 restrictions, etc., compliance, etc., that everyone has to adhere to. Are there any events planned community-wise this financial year that council is contributing to? Are we able to get what they are at all?
So through the chair, there's a number of things that have been happening over the last few months, which I'd be very happy to talk councillors through. Number one, every stakeholder in council that delivers or has a touch point on an event or a program, whether that be a parks booking, the events team, community development with Crank, the libraries and art gallery, they've been meeting on a regular basis to streamline all of our event and program requirements. Mm-hmm. That we've also sought legal advice in that regard to ensure that our contracts are correctly worded and in terms of liabilities are accounted for, etc. So that's the first one thing that's been happening in the background. The second thing that has been happening is we've been working under the Events Attraction Program, where we purchase events and attract events into the city. 3 weeks ago we had 2 events. One was the Touch Rugby League and one was the mountain biking event. We have a couple more on the horizon this finette.
Rogue Raid this month and then the PGA.
So we've got an event called Rogue Raid and the PGA Golf within the next 2 months. So that's the second layer that we've been working on. The third layer that we've been working on is through the Sponsorship Advisory Group, working very heavily with community groups in terms of the events that they're looking to deliver, particularly between now and Christmas, but also ongoing. Working with them to help them understand what their requirements are under COVID safe, but also ensuring that they're going through the correct channels, which is not council, but supporting where we can. We're happy to circulate a list. We've also been working with the internal grants group. Michelle Griffin and I came and worked with councillors on some information there. We're looking at a more streamlined way to give councillors the information about what grant funding has been provided, but we're more than happy to give you a list of what events have been approved so far this year.
Thank you so much for that explanation, Beck. And just on your point about the Mighty Mountain Biking event that was held at Daisy Hill Conservation Park, I wasn't able to attend, but my understanding we had a former Olympian there and also someone who's on our wall of acclaim as well, so someone of quite significance who actually attended and participated in that event. So you definitely did get a fair bit of reach with that.
And through the Chair, through the Events Attraction Program, there's some very exciting events on the horizon that really utilise the assets, whether they be natural or constructed infrastructure. The events that we're bringing into the city really maximise the best use of either or both. And we're really thrilled with where that program's going.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions? Councillor Bannon.
Thank you. And through the Chair, Beck, I was really keen to see this whole report. I get, because I've promoted for so long, and a lot of people had input, and I didn't. It wasn't because I wasn't interested, it's just because I wanted to see how you guys did it. But the whole plans, everything that you've done is incredible, the way you work with other councils, other regions. It's a massive task to go from, arts to sports to community to pulling in big events. I love the way you're going to look at it going to one universal ticketing system, because I know from our point of view, having that active database, and the first thing we go to sponsors, the first thing they ask is what's your reach. But I think it's sensational what you've done. I'm really looking forward to sitting back and watching how it unfolds.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other statements? I'd just like to commend the officers. Obviously, it's been a very challenging time around COVID, and it's had such an incredible impact not only on council's events, but events for our community as well. And I'm really pleased to see that we're not sitting on our hands waiting for things to change, but we're innovating and finding new ways that we can deliver events in partnership with our community. And I commend you both on your hard work and your teams as well. Councillors, the recommendations, we'll pop those up on the board in front of you, and I'm wondering if I could potentially have someone to move the recommendations. Councillor Bannon has moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bradley has seconded the recommendations. Can I please have a show of hands, those who are in support? Thank you, everyone. That's unanimously supported. Councillors, I now draw your attention to page 222 of your committee report. We're moving on to the Events Recurrent Funding Review. And before we get into the report, councillors, anyone have any conflicts of interest that they wish to put forward? There being no conflicts of interest, I'll ask our Marketing and Events Manager, Beck Smith, to please present her report.
Through the Chair. Councillors, the report that you've got in front of you details or outlines an agreement that was made in 2009, which guaranteed annual funding to 4 events: the Beenleigh District Cane Festival, the Beenleigh Show, the Eagleby Festival, and the Spring Mountain Endurance Ride. The team have been doing some due diligence in this space, and we feel that it would be appropriate. The funding is in perpetuity. There's very little criteria around the success of the event, and we're seeking confirmation to roll back the continual annual funding, and for us to work with the community groups for them, if they wish to continue the event, to actually make an application for the funding rather than the funding be guaranteed.
Thank you, Beck. I've got a few questions at the moment. I'm going to start with Councillor Bradley.
I do remember, because this was around the time of amalgamation and historic, and if I had my notes from that time, I would be able to tell you exactly what happened. But anyway, that's another story. That's not for this conversation. But historically, when at amalgamation, there were previously in Gold Coast City Council and the old Bow Desert City Council, Shire, whatever it was, there was those arrangements for that funding, and it was continuous every year. And the concern was when it came to Logan, well, we've never done that before. And that's my recollection of what actually transpired. So from my understanding and memory, it was supposed to be for a certain period of time following amalgamation, and then it was to be gradually change so that you apply as do other people apply for events, and you follow the same criteria as other events in the city. So that was my understanding. It was supposed to go down that road, and what my memory is. Just
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Did you have any comments, Beck?
So through the chair, the original report doesn't state an end date, and so we're probably making a reference point back to that.
So and that's what this report's about, is
Yes,
actually
that wasn't very eloquent,
tying
sorry.
up the loose end. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much through you, Madam Chair. I'd be really keen to hear from the Divisional Councillor that covers 3 of, I think, the opportunities for community events, and I'd like to ask her questions after she's put a view forward, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So I'll go to Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Lane. I've had extensive discussions with the marketing team and Beck with regards to the 3 events that are in my division, which is the Beanley Cane Festival, which is no longer being held. The Beanley Show this year is not happening because of COVID, and the Eagleby Festival, which is an annual event. We've had extensive talks with regards to this. I support what Beck is saying, that an end date for these funding should happen, and I encourage those people that are still effective, like the Eagleby Festival and the Beanley Show, to make an application through the normal grants process.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. So just to be clear, this doesn't prohibit anybody from making any future applications for council funding. Thank you. Did you want to continue, Councillor Lane?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. So my question to Councillor Murphy is that if the support of this goes through and there is an onus on these groups to apply, will it go the same way as Kaleidoscope, where it falls over and the community loses out on such a great annual event that many people used to enjoy? That's my concern. I just wanted to...
I note your concern. Councillor Murphy, did you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Councillor Lane, and through the chair. The only one that I have any real concerns about is the Eagleby Festival, but I would certainly work with the Eagleby community group to make that application viable for the community. I'd love to see that continue. The Beanley Show, we've just sponsored that with no KPIs and no questions asked, and that has gone from a couple of days festival down to just the 1-day festival. I'd just like to see them apply like everybody else that is seeking funding through Logan City Council. And the Beanley District Cane Festival is no longer at all. However, I would like to see some sort of activity or event happen back in Beanley for the celebration of that area, whether it takes that form or not. But again, it should also go through the proper channels for funding and a grant process and KPIs to be set. I don't think it is responsible for the council to be handing out funds without some sort of outcome at the end, and that's what this does at the moment. So those funds are handed over and no KPIs are set at all. So we're just putting some onus back onto the festival organiser.
Thank you. Councillor Lane, anything further?
100% answered. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would also like to ask Councillor Wilcox for her input.
Thank you. Question, have you been able to get hold of Big Riders Country Endurance to speak to them about it?
Through the chair, we haven't had any conversations with these stakeholders yet. It would be our intention, pending the outcome of this report, to then go and speak to them.
That answers it.
Any further questions for you, Councillor Wilcox? Any other questions from the floor? Councillors, the recommendations are on the board in front of you. Can I have somebody to move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Do I have a seconder for the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Could I have a show of hands, those who support the recommendation? And that's unanimously supported. Thank you, councillors. Okay, councillors, we're moving on to page 163 of your committee reports, and I note that this is actually a confidential report. For those that are in the gallery, this is actually the last report of the day, just so that you are aware. So this report actually relates to city image and identity, and I'm just having a quick look here. Councillors, also for your benefit, that is actually 9.1 in your confidential items, which is on page 84 of 86. Councillors, I wonder if I could have someone please move us into confidential for this report. And just before we do, I'll ask if anyone has any conflicts of interest that they need to share with us. My apologies for the oversight. There being no conflicts of interest, councillors, I would now ask for someone to move us into confidential. Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Seconded by Councillor Lane. Can I have a show of hands? Fantastic. With that in mind, we'll move into confidential and we'll cease the recording. Thank you to the members of the gallery, if you wouldn't mind stepping out. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. So now we've got the recommendations up on the screen ahead of you. Could I have somebody to move the recommendation? Councillor Hall has moved the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Hall. And a seconder for the recommendation, that's Councillor Bradley, has seconded the recommendation. And could I please see a show of hands? That recommendation is supported by Councillors Bradley, the Mayor, Councillor Lane, Councillor Russell, Councillor Raven, Councillor Hall, Councillor Fraser, Councillor Jeremiah, Councillor Bannon, Councillor Stemp. Councillor Stemp is abstaining, Councillor Wilcox, Councillor Murphy, and I too am in support. That motion has carried. Thank you, everyone. Have we got any GB for the manager? Beck, do you have any GB for us?
Through the chair, I just have two quick items. Councillors, you would have received an email invitation from Kate Ryan in the events program space for the upcoming volunteers breakfast. That will be one of the first events we've been able to deliver for you. It is a much more streamlined program this year. It will be councillors and the nominees. It will be held here at the Logan Entertainment Centre, and it is an opportunity for the individual and community group volunteers to come together and for them to be celebrated and for the winners to be announced. So that is on Saturday the 26th of September, and the diary invite is with you. And the second bit of GB is we have a number of marketing promotional items that we've had warehoused. I've brought them back in to the building, and we're going to create packs for the councillors, and we will be providing you with various promotional items, and there will be no charge or cost back to councillors. We're still waiting for the final items to come back in from the warehouse, but I'm just letting you know that it's coming. I'm happy to email councillors, and if you do not wish to take a delivery of items, we will then disperse them through other councillors.
Councillor Raven, did you have a question?
Are there any shiny red pens with my name on it, like this one?
Through the chair, I don't believe so, no.
Ah, there we go.
Any
Straight to landfill.
Any other questions? I'd just like to acknowledge Beck and Kate, and thank you for the tremendous work. There are a number of reports that came up from you guys today, and I know that there was a lot of work that went in behind the scenes to make those reports possible. So please pass on to your whole team our gratitude of thanks. Just before we wrap up, I've got the Director, of course, with Community Services with us. Have we got any questions for the Director? Katie, do you have anything for us? Councillors, I'd just like to say a huge thank you. I know it was a bit of a marathon session this morning, and thank you for your patience and keeping your energy levels high as we work through the report, the whole Community Services report for today. I really appreciate that. And that completes our agenda for today. I'd like to declare the City Lifestyle Committee meeting concluded at 1:50 p.m.